Hello everyone and welcome to the Flaminar series NAB 2017 retrospective. I'm Yann Laforêt and I'm talking to you from the Flame Montreal head office. So we have a pretty big event for you today, and the team is really thrilled to show you the new feature we're working on. So here's some quick information about today's meeting. So the meeting is scheduled for about 60 minutes. And we might take some live question at the end of the presentation if time allows. If your comment or question remains unanswered after the presentation, we ask you to send it to the flaminars@autodesk.com email address so we can get back to you later on with the answer. That being said, so we are ready to present our panelists for today. So Will, if and just go to the next slide, please. And the next one, yeah. So we have Will Harris, our Flame Product Manager, Francis Bouillon for the Library, our user experience designer. And that's it for me. So hope you will enjoy this presentation. And it's time to give the microphone to my friend and colleague, Will Harris. So Will, all yours.
Thank you, Yann. And thanks for joining us, everyone. The idea of this meeting was really to give you an experience of what we were showing at NAB this year, and it was a real interesting NAB for us. We took a slightly different approach to historical years, where actually instead of having a trade show booth, we did a series of meetings, traditional sort of sales demos, if you like, but what the development team did was what we call the technology taster suite. It was a fun kind of way to be able to share some projects and ideas of things that we're working on near term and further out, and without being able to promise individual releases where we hope to land these features that we're going to show you today. We're glad to be able to share it with you and sort of explain some of what we're working on, and hopefully that's going to be interesting for you. Real quick, then, the NAB event was fun still for us. We had, like I said, we had some sales suites. We had some Flame beer bottles. We had the Flame Award. So congratulations to Miran Stepanyan on winning the Flame Award. And then we had this tech preview or tech suite area where folks came to learn about what we're working on. We had some individual color sessions with our Autodesk color scientist, Doug Walker, as well. And that was well received, I think. So we're here to give you essentially a bit of a recap of that. We had a lot of our team there to meet folks. We hope to do the same thing again for IBC this year if you're over in Europe. And indeed, this is where there was a lot of nice pillows, and I think some of them ended up in Montreal, some of them on Logic, and that was good too. I wanted to mention to you folks that we do have a new Flame learning curriculum, and it is available to any institution that would like to use it. We have both a beginner's guide and the step-by-step sort of deeper dive into modules. It's a full data set with with an instructor guide, student guide. If any of you are connected to educational institutions, please let us know. We'd be happy to send you a copy of this data. And as you may know, the Flame software does have an EDU version where any student or anyone connected with an EDU institution can get a 3-year complimentary license of Flame as part to use in education. So that's good. The other message that we had again at NAB this year was to do with further unleashing our hardware story. We're adding new self-qualified workstations in the form of the Lenovo P910. There are new SAN and NAS storage options out there. These were shown at the various booths of these partners as well. And it's an exciting time for Flame. It's growing. It's becoming more diverse in terms of the hardware options you can use. We have this storage self-qualification program where the different vendors are running benchmark tests and achieving great results in these days of 10 gig NAS and even higher performant storage. So that's a good story too, I think. So let's move on to the good stuff, right? So we just wanted to remind you that the prototypes we'll be showing here are not fully developed, even though it can be tantalizing how cool these things look, and it's amazing work that our team's been doing. But bear in mind that the quality control, the level of sophistication that is needed to make a released version of these features. So just keep an open mind and let us know what you think about the ideas that we're going to present. We organize our kind of future prototypes under these three themes. So it sort of fits with the overall goal of our Flame family of products, which is to be the best story hub we can be for you in terms of conform, building your offline to online edits, publishing out if need be, but really just the richness of how much metadata and how much sophistication we can get in and work with and work efficiently for timelines, indeed multiple timelines, is a theme that is represented by owning conform. Grading and VFX is really the timing is such that HDR is very much coming into our industry now. We've been predicting it for a while, but it really felt like at this NAB that it was starting to get much more real for much more people, and I think that's an important motivator for more integrated grading and VFX going forward. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But there's also some pretty cool innovations that our team is doing in a pure sort of 3D scene and VFX and tracking world that we'd like to share with you as well. In terms of openness, we have a kind of a software strategy and a hardware strategy. I just mentioned some of the new platforms for hardware, but we also have we were showing at NAB a prototype of 8K 60p, 60 frames per second playback on a special NVMe storage version of a Flame workstation, and we had a PC over IP presentation as well, which I'm going to show you a little bit of detail on later on. And then on the software side, we're going to talk about a Python API for Flame, as well as a cool little new node called PyBox. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the prototypes. I'll make sure we get through all of these within the hour, and we'll take questions on the chat as well as we could open the mic, I think, at the end if there's time. All right, so let us just have a little bit more detail on the themes that we have. So within the conform and publish, we have a near-term strategy and a longer-term strategy. We're going to focus on that near-term today. And then under grading and VFX, we wanted to introduce to you the concept of final image mastering. That's the umbrella term that we use for integrating grading and VFX work in a new environment inside of Flame, and how we think that should look. And then we've got some more innovations on the software side, as well as these openness initiatives. Another level of granularity here actually explains some of the initiatives, as we call them. I'd like to show you some of our richer conform tool sets. I'd like to show you some of the look and scene shot-to-shot navigation of grading and VFX, and so on. So let's keep going down through here, and you can let us know which ones are most interesting for you. So in the own conform and publish area, our idea is that we think we should continue with what's been a very well-received area of the software, the connected conform area, and that's really our way of talking about managing multiple timelines. And it started back in 2016, extension 1, I believe, but there's been some cool innovations in the recent 2018. This is an idea that we think could actually really solve even more problems for late arriving editorial changes. It's the idea of being able to update our sources, the shared sources, if you like, that would be needed in an original edit and a new late arriving edit, and a way to sort of smart merge in those changes to allow shots to continue on, even if, for example, the head of a shot is rolled. So that may sound like it's almost impossible. Certainly in a lot of workflows, it is impossible to handle that kind of change, but we think we've got a way to do it. So I'm going to let our very own Stefan Labrie explain a little bit about that to us right now.
Hey, Will, it seems that we do not have sound here.
All right, so it sounds like you actually can't hear Stefan there. So let me just explain a bit more about what's going on here. Sorry about that. We thought we would be able to hear. It's okay. So what we have then is a little bit more explanation around the idea of this sources sequence could actually be updated when a new edit comes, and then when you do that update, you'd be able to define which real groups are affected. So as you end up with timelines that share sources within their groups, and indeed even the batches could be extended from one to another. So that's a really cool way of being able to bring an update through an editorial change, which has been a very hard thing to do. We think that this might be a really interesting idea. So let's carry on, and I'll explain them as we go. The open clip creator is another idea that we think would actually be a really cool innovation. If any of you have followed the Flame dot clip or open clip history, you would know that it's an external way to actually have a pointer file that points to individual pieces of media, but also it's a versionable pointer, and that means that it could be allowed, and pipeline folks have used it historically to be able to create a kind of a pointer, or if you like, a Dropbox pointer file that allows people to bring versions of EXR media into their Flame or versions of anything they like. What we think would be a good idea would be to actually create something that would allow people to do this in a more sort of easy, artist accessible way. So a GUI tool that would allow you to point to a piece of media or multiple versions that already existed, or even better, folder structure that will be populated based on a pattern. So we think that this would allow you to kind of define a tokenized naming structure that could point to where the files will be, if you like, and then as they get rendered or file copied into that location, you'd actually be able to, without really much sort of real scripting knowledge, be able to then get updated versions of external media quite seamlessly into your Flame environment. So let's have a look at this, and I'll explain it a little bit as we go. So the idea of this would be that you want to be able to carry a bunch of versions. You could actually just pick a bunch of clips and say, I want a multi-version of these versions, or you could actually re-grab those when a new version was rendered. So that's good, but to be able to go a little bit further, we think that the pattern might even be better. But so you can see how the open clip works, allowing you to look at multiple versions in this virtual pointer file. There they are. And it's good to I mean, it's powerful on its own, and a nice UI tool to do that. But then what if you didn't know what was coming down the line? One of the problems could actually be this, which is a broken sequence could be in place. In other words, you might have a partial render, and by being able to check before and after, what we could actually do here is to sort of essentially sort these files and say we expect that the in-between files will come, but this is the total range that I want to make a clip from. And then what that becomes is really a kind of a placeholder for the total duration so that when more frames are rendered, they will come in. That's pretty cool. And then on the pattern that I described and hyped up for you, this is where you could actually say, okay, in the media folder, based on the name or the base or trunk file name, I believe that this will be there, and then there might be a version tag .exr or .mov or .dpx, and then that will actually be a way of looking or refreshing when new clips are when new media is rendered. They would be able to be refreshed into this. So yeah, what we're going to do here is actually render out another one just to make the illustration. This obviously wouldn't be done probably by Flame, but by another application that Flame is reading from, perhaps. But then at that moment, by just refreshing the view of that folder structure, you can see that we now have all 5 of our versions are now available to us. So that's the Open Clip Creator idea. Now let's talk about something called PyBox. What in the family of Matchbox and Lightbox, which are other tools inside of Flame, we think that a new innovation might be to have a way to use Python scripting to connect to virtually any other scriptable application. So you might want to use this for sort of outsourcing or connecting out to another application for a 3D modeling task, compositing, color grading, and we think that this could be useful to sort of have a generic mechanism to connect to other third-party tools. We're going to we'd like to show you an example with Foundry Nuke here, but potentially this could work for a whole range of applications that would allow a sort of a scriptable command line renderer or even more sophistication. So let me just explain how it could work. From the timeline or the batch of Flame, you could connect to this special node that is really a Python handler for another application or a command line renderer. That third-party app could pick up the source file and then do something with it and send us back to the other side of the node, if you like, a result image that would then connect further along into the Flame pipeline. just a really interesting way to be able to connect to the things that Flame cannot do, but yet still keep it in your ecosystem, if you like. So let's have a look at this. So the idea is that if you start with a source image and you want to do something, and our little illustration here is just a sky replacement, but let's say you've pulled a key here in Flame and you'd like to connect to a specific comp that you did in another application. In this case, it's Foundry Nuke, and the idea is to connect. You pick your actual scene file, the .nk file here, and immediately see a result of what you connected to. So there's the sky in place. You can see that there are some values that are editable here that are actually directly controlling the Nuke script. That's interesting. But this would allow you to animate things, move things around, and we're going to explain to you how that's possible. If you wanted to just animate, the move of the sky, for example, this is something that you could do. And remember, this is not a Flame process as much as it is a third-party process that's being controlled by the animation editor in Flame. So let's just see, let's understand. If we click Open Editor here, this is what it looks like on the Nuke side, which could be on the same workstation or somewhere else. It's just a script that's accessible to the Flame, and then the command line renderer accessible on the Flame workstation. But the idea is that this special node is really via Python scripting is surfaced into the custom-built UI on the Flame side, which is actually part of Matchbox itself. So that's how we're able to sort of fly-by-wire here and be able to make adjustments and reissue commands to that command line renderer saying, open that scene, but change this value and give me a result. That is essentially what's happening here in PyBox. So you can imagine that this could be used at the timeline level. It could be used by other applications as well as Nuke here, and just an interesting way to connect out to more things than we could ever possibly develop through connection to other third-party applications. Okay, so what about the Python API for Flame? This is another idea that we think would be valuable for further controlling or driving the Flame from Python commands, as well as the standard user-driven approach. And it's an idea to be able to solve some productivity issues, such as loading the wrong media by a human, or actually if you wanted to bring a bunch of different media at the correct version, having maybe even talking to an external database, by having a Python API, these things can be managed by the computer, if you like. And there's more too. We think that this would allow us to control certain settings within existing nodes in batch, maybe populate a write node to correctly render to the right location, so the artist doesn't have to worry about the plumbing, if you like, of either the importing of the media or the writing of the media, but could just focus on the main creative task of compositing. Let's just have a look at how this could work. So I think the highlights here are really the idea that through our connection to Shotgun here, we have what's called the Shotgun Python console, which is one way to be able to have a command editor or a script editor that we in this prototype have, and you can see the actual the Python language here, where it's actually defining a few things like how many reels do we want, the name of the shot, the start frame duration, and then of course defining which media we want to bring in, adding some individual nodes, and populating that write file. So this is not the most sophisticated Python you would ever run into. We'd expect a sort of a junior person knowing Python to be able to do this and use this. And you can see that by running that little script, you get a SHOT-30, and you get the basic components connected and the write file to render back to the right path in your storage connected. You could also be able to then do some interrogation of nodes in terms of what they do for you. So this is getting the current attributes of a node. So for example, if we wanted to change all our screens to ads, or we wanted to make sure that we'd connected something wrong, we want to change a bunch of connections in our batch. In this little example here, it's literally taking the transparency and setting it from the 50% that it's at to 0. This hopefully just gives you an idea of the level of detail that you could get into via a Python API that would allow you to take these kind of repetitive tasks or productivity tasks or things that you would just forget to do as an artist, maybe, and solve them with the machine. All right, so on the theme of grading and VFX, what we have here is some interesting prototypes around, on the 3D side, if you like. We think that it would be a good idea to enhance our projectors to allow you to do things like a stick or a track in place, or sometimes people would call it a UV bake, that would allow you to actually, instead of have your projection slide over an object, be able to make it stick at a certain frame and a certain orientation. And then when your objects move or get deformed, they would still respect the sort of the placement of the projector on the frame that you chose. This could be really useful for building set extensions or kind of creative particle effects. And indeed, we think this would be could be a multi-channel effect. Well, that would mean that the lighting and roughness would be understood by through the projection, and you wouldn't have to sort of relight it from scratch. This is a really nice little example where if you're doing a sort of a layered projection on your object, you could choose to bake and then solve this problem, which is the slipping of your projection on a surface. So there you can see that once you've set you set your UV reference, you're able to then, even with multi-projectors, lock that in. It's something that wasn't possible, isn't possible today in Flame, but we think would be a useful kind of tool for anyone doing 3D projection. Even if you had an extended by cubic image, which is actually a geometry, if you think about it, this same technique would work, allowing you to say, at this frame, I want the lineup, the UV layout to stick and track with the movement, if you like, of the deformed object. There you go. So with these kind of innovations, it's hard to imagine all the ways that our creative customers might use these things, but this is just some of the ways we think it would be useful. And then this little section to illustrate the multi-channel aspect. That means that the lighting attributes of the underlying surface could be understood, or indeed that the projection will understand that lighting, and will actually give you a very realistic result very quickly. Versus the historical way projectors work, where it's a sort of a punch through of video and would have to be relit, if you like. So that's pretty cool. All right, so the look node is an idea that we think it's sort of half creative and half pipeline, where it would allow you to apply sort of standard CDL values on a shot-by-shot basis, either via a conform or via an actual sidecar file, so that we think that the .cc and the .ccc would be good format for that. And then the .cdl could be used to conform. This would allow you to apply looks and apply them in the correct color space that the look. This could be an interesting tool. Other innovations that we think would be valuable in the 3D world could be the ability to understand z-depth as an input to allow for automatic occlusions, and also to input motion vector information, so as that maybe those vectors could be used to drive movement inside of action. Let's just say that. At this point, I just want to remind you that as we continue down, some of this stuff gets a little bit more hard to predict, and please don't make assumptions about these features arriving in a specific version or any version, but we want to share this stuff with you, and hopefully with that understanding, we'll carry on. So let's talk about the history of the different disciplines that are part of the Flame family. Historically, we had editing and finishing in our smoke product. We had VFX, shot-based mainly, in our Flame product, and we had the luster separate color grading tool. Where we stand today is that the new Flame, if you like, in the last few years has become a timeline-centric VFX and editing tool. We have the luster, which has this connected color workflow, the ability to be able to jump from luster into the batch environment of Flame and back. But in the longer term, I think there's even an even more integrated solution that we need to get to, and we think that could look something like this, where grading and look development becomes weaved into editing and VFX, at least in the world of finishing that we live in, and as a sort of a blurry line, if you like, where the process of creating overall looks, as well as kind of look development, becomes one iterative creative process that you probably couldn't separate between finishing VFX, grading, and editorial. They all intertwine, we think. And when we think the opportunity is to actually build, excuse me, a next generation sort of image adjustment tool set that would need to be a sort of a powerful image manipulation tool for an individual shot, but also fast for shot-to-shot navigation. We think it's a good time to look at the way to monitor our signals, and actually looking at different color spaces, especially considering the HDR standards. So we think it might be good to look at that again inside the software. And then to make a successful solution here, we think we need the discrete take on color and look data. What I mean by that is we need tools that are simple and easy to use intuitively, like something like the Master Kia, but philosophically speaking, but also powerful to be able to get down into levels of detail and use the information that's in the incoming source. So that might not be just 2D information, it might be 3D information coming in. AOV passes, render passes, even 3D projection could become sort of part of the normal process of making a beautiful image, we think. Not forgetting that the speed of shot-to-shot navigation for simpler shots is very important. So let's So let's take a look at how we think we could solve that. Just to state the problem one more time, we think that we need to do some sort of grading to solve the problem really of the somewhat multi-step workflows that are out there right now, where we see people doing stuff in other software and then either redoing it in Flame or having to deal with the linearity, the rendered elements that should be more virtual, we think, in this day and age. We see people with two conforms, two timeline hubs, multiple renders, wasted space. And wouldn't it be great if we could actually, for the right kind of projects at least, start to see people do that as an all integrated finishing tool set. Maybe that's a bold thing to say, but I think it's good to be bold. We think that one of the ideas that would allow this might be something that we're currently calling action selective. That could be used to do some of the tasks that you might associate with keying, with grading, like keying, masking, and then applying effects. Those effects don't have to be just color grades. They could be lens flares, they could be light effects or rays, blooms, and all contributing to the overall look. Just like if you were working in Photoshop on a still, you wouldn't limit yourself to just color grades. You would use whatever tools were available to you. And that's the approach that we think would make a lot of sense here for artists. We think it should connect into the Matchbox environment so that the community could contribute. And of course, we think it should understand the 3D information coming in as well as a 2D plate. So that would mean that whilst a simple shape and color grade could be achieved quickly, if there was normals on a CG render or depth information, that could be used to isolate or attenuate the effect that you are maybe achieving otherwise in 2D without those elements. Hopefully that makes some sense. Let's have a look at it in action, as they say. And that's, I guess, a bit of a joke, because it is in action. What could this look like? Well, this is a mock-up, if you like, or a prototype of an environment in Flame that we call the final image mastering environment, where you have a sort of a new way of using action. And really what it is it's as you can see, it's the active tool, a storyboard view, and the image itself with the ability to quickly add individual selectives. You might think of them like secondaries, where you can then do different things. So layer 1 could be adjusting the highlights. Layer 2 here, or selective 2, would be to actually apply something like a bloom or a glint or essentially a glowing effect. And then we would be able to use another layer with a different kind of isolation through keying and shapes to formulate our look in 3 easy layers. On this next shot, we might draw a mask to isolate, a person's face. If you're used to action, historically, this is not too alien to you. It's just the Gmask tool. It's just that the way we're authoring it, as you may notice, is without using the node bin, without using the schematic. It's all about the image and the tool, which is really just a way of thinking that makes you fast. It doesn't have to be limited to color grading. It could just be a way of authoring quickly and quickly grabbing the next effect you want, whether it's another layer or maybe an outside effect, as we call it. So that's basically using the invert of the matte created by that mask to desaturate everything else. So what we're doing here is we're effectively using action like a color grading system, and that allows us to work very quickly. But we're not limited to the traditional effects of color grading, if you like. It's really just a way of authoring everything we have. So then dragging and dropping your effects from individual shots should be part of this. This is a little look behind the scenes. You can see that what is being created in this prototype is actually just action nodes, a new kind of action node in the standard schematic. It's just that you don't have to look at the schematic all the time while you work. But of course, if you're going to do some surgery or rethread what object connects to what, it's very open, it's very non-linear. You can rebuild the pipeline in any order you want because it's action. And I think that the thing to point out here is that the techniques that we're using are actually matchboxes that could be, different versions of the same thing could be authored by our community. We think that's very powerful. We actually have some more special source that could actually be very interesting here, and that's the concept of strength. If you think about the way a normal mat works, it takes an effect and then essentially composites or blends the original and the affected, like we see right here. But that's not maybe the best thing for something like a twirl, because you just end up with this sort of fade off, whereas the concept of strength actually kind of normalizes or brings to normal the effect. Instead of just sort of comping it, it actually provides this sort of fall off or strength, which I think could be very interesting for light in HDR as well as kind of creative effects. But certainly this doesn't need to be limited to 2D elements. If you have a way of being able to, if you have 3D elements in your scene and you want to be able to do masking and lighting and really grading on top of your 3D elements, it gets to be a very blurry line where you could author reflections, you could author color, you could author rays. It's really just a way of being able to do overall look development on your images. So what about shot-to-shot navigation? Obviously, this is important too. This is not something that we want to overlook. The speed of doing things in 2D is just as important, you could argue, as having the depth in 3D. We would think that it would be important to be able to see a matrix view of your images, see your waveform vector scopes as part of your desktop layout, if you like, and then be able to quickly drag and drop effects down the timeline, and then even when you roll from one shot to another, to be able to instantly activate effects, which is a way of thinking that we do not have in Flame today, but we think would benefit color grading and any kind of sort of finishing tasks. Quick review of your work could perhaps be done in this mode as well. That's what makes it most interesting, I think, in some ways. Here's another idea, slightly different subject. We've heard great successes from our customers in the area of 360 video, which is, if you like, live action VR, if you like. And one of the prototypes that we built was to actually sort of have a way to deal with it. So let's show you that. Actually, that's actually the explanation. It's a way to be able to work in your player and scrub a wrapped scene while you play back. So that's the idea for that one. Another idea we had was to actually be able to use something like Stingray PBS to import and maintain the look of sort of detailed textures and lighting from Maya to Flame. It's something that may or may not be valuable to you, but it's something you can let us know. And then on the hardware side, other stuff that we were showing back at NAB was some 8K playback, as I said, a prototype control surface, a large control surface and a PC over IP solution. So let's just talk about 8K for a minute. The reason to push the envelope here for us is certainly not just to be able to say we can do 8K at RGB 444 uncompressed, although that is obviously impressive, but more to understand the limits of current architectures, and indeed pushing this boundary makes everything faster. Being able to play back 8K makes rendering in 4K faster, and HD and custom sizes are all benefited from this kind of work. And really what we got to was the ability to be able to play back at this resolution all the way at 60p. Again, it's a prototype, but even we found that we could even do some basic timeline effects on top of that. The technology was you might think some standard parts, but special storage, able to achieve the 12 gigabytes per second playback that are needed for an uncompressed 8K at that frame rate. All right, so that's cool. I wanted to mention this Tangent Tsunami prototype, which is a new panel, a new control panel that is part of the Tangent Hub family that we've had a big input in the design with. It's a Tangent product. It's not an Autodesk product, but it's really quite a cool new panel that may be out there soon. The thing that's so interesting about it actually is that, like the Element, it's reprogrammable, but each individual display is actually local to the button, which means that you can actually do quite a nice job of remapping this any way you'd like. All right. So then finally here, I just wanted to talk about our PC over IP technology, and that is it's not our technology. Excuse me. It's pieces of technology that we put together to really prove that it's possible to remote connect to your Flame workstation, whether it be a sort of a private cloud or a corporate LAN or WAN type connection, based on obviously the overall bandwidth, by connecting from the workstation in a server room to a remote location, whether it's your satellite office or your log cabin in the woods where you want to work from. This is a technology that could allow that. It's pretty an amazing experience in terms of being able to have the entire sort of desk pieces remotely, so it's the monitor, the Wacom tablet, the mouse and keyboard as well, and that's it. And everything else is a Cat5 connection that essentially goes back to the full workstation in a server room. This was the demo that we built. The prototype was really was actually a Dell R7910 with that Teradici PC over IP hardware encoder, if you like, that encodes the signal from the whole UI and connects to a thin client on the other end. All right, so that's everything that we wanted to share with you. At this point, should we take some questions on the chat?
Yes, we have a few minutes to take some questions. I'm looking at the question we have, and we have a few about action selective, but the thing is that most of the questions are basically related to the way the feature is going to work in the future. So we just want to remind you that this is a prototype at this point. We are just taking your comment into account, but we cannot tell exactly if it's going to work this way or that way. So this is really too early for that. Otherwise, we are open for question now if you have a few. So, well, I'm not getting any question now. So as said, if you have any questions or comment you want to share with the team, you can just do it through the Flaminar at autodesk.com and we'll get back to you. Oh, so we have a question. So So how large is the storage on the NVMe for 8K playback? Is it something? Yeah, just
it was
go ahead.
only
Will.
like 4 terabytes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So indeed, it's one of the limitations for uncompressed 8K, but we'll be monitoring how much those technologies get faster or bigger, and indeed whether sort of standard technologies like fiber connections may one day be able to handle that kind of bandwidth. That's why it's a prototype right now.
So next question, would the Open Clip Editor be a pop-up in Flame, or you must launch it separately?
Actually, it will be a pop-up in Flame, and you'll be able to run it from command line on the Flame workstation. We also hope to be able to deliver it as a standalone utility that could run on any machine, not just on the Flame, but for sure it will be a pop-up in Flame.
Thank you, Will. Well, I think that's it for us. So we just want to thank you for attending this this presentation. As said, if you have any questions, comment, please send it to flaminar@autodesk.com, and we'll just get back to you shortly on these. And also, the recording of this presentation is going to be available in few days on Flame Feedback. So we just want to thank you for attending this, and we talk to you later. So bye-bye and have a nice day.
Thanks, folks.